the best decisions I've ever made in business are around hiring and firing. So when we think about adding team members or removing team members, just remember that those decisions are huge for your business, huge for yourself. Because when I talk to a property management owners and they're complaining, 90% of the time it's about employee performance. But if you're doing the right things in your hiring process, you can avoid a lot of those issues.
We're going to start to bring up our future of property management panel. So if we can start bringing up our panelists, that would be much appreciated. I think we've got Andy Propst here from Home River Group. There's Laura. Laura, if you could wave, everyone could see you. Laura from Roofstock, awesome. There's Andy, great to see you. And there's Mike, awesome, coming up, getting spotlighted. We'll get the whole panel up here and we'll get ready to dive in and get started. As a way of getting started, Laura, if you could start first and just give a brief introduction for those who don't know you or haven't met you yet. You could just share, your name, your company, anything else you think would be important context. We'll go to Andy and then Mike after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, it's great to meet everyone. I'm Laura Orr. I'm the VP of Leasing and Resident Services here at StreetLink, which is owned by Roofstock. So my responsibility at our company is making sure we get our homes rented and keep our residents happy.
Awesome. Andy, we'll go to you next.
Hello, my name is Andrew Propst, and I am most proud of being one of the original users of Filter Easy, which is now Second Nature. Also, the Chief Development Officer of Home River Group, which is a third-party residential property management company. We're in 66 markets. We manage about 41,000 single-family rentals. So great to be here, and thank you, Second Nature, for all the work you're doing for the NARPM charity Make-A-Wish. What a great foundation.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Mike, we'll come to you.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Thanks so much for having me. I'm Mike Catalano. I'm the co-founder of Pure Property Management. We're a property management and technology company. We're based in about 23 states, manage a little over 20,000 doors. Excited to be on. So thank you for having us and me and on the call here. Love being on with Andy, a good friend of mine. So hi, Andy. Laura, I haven't met you personally, but I did see you speak at a conference and you did a fantastic job. So very excited to be on with you as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, we've got this exciting executive panel here to talk about the future of property management. Many of our past events, these panels and the conversations that have been sparked after this have been really valuable takeaways. And I just want to encourage you, if you haven't found that workbook yet, or if you're just joining us after the intro where we made that comment, we'll probably drop it in the chat. There's a place there where you can take some notes. And ultimately, you're probably going to want to take some notes. If not, you can find some scratch paper, because after this, we're going to get you into conversations with peers to really deepen the learnings and start to make this really relevant, help put this into action, get some peer sounding boards on some of the ideas that you heard today. So just want to make sure everyone has that note, and we'll get started. So with that said, question number one. What are the trends that you're building your business around right now? And we'll start with Laura. We'll go in the same order that we started here, but we'll feel free to mix it up and bounce around. What trends are you guys paying attention to at Roofstock? Laura, what are you thinking about and organizing the business around?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing I should have mentioned, for those of you who don't know who Roofstock is, we're a sort of a tech-forward property company, and we operate in lots of different realms of business, but the side of the business that I work in is the property management side of the business. We have about 16,500 homes under management, but we're a third-party property manager. Some institutional clients, some mum and dad investors as well. So we have quite a big mix of properties, locations and price points and everything. So with that all said, a resident is a resident. Doesn't really matter who the owner of the property is. A resident is looking for a certain number of things in order to enjoy their home. There's obviously quality of the asset and making sure that that can be maintained in a standard so that they can enjoy their home. But ultimately, I think for me and what we're trying to build around is sort of an automated self-service business. So sort of have the fundamental belief that residents don't really want to talk to someone if they can get the answers that they need either online or get automated updates for things that are going on. Maintenance is the number one thing that comes up if they can get proactive automations for things that are happening, then they're content, they know it's being worked on, they feel comfortable, they don't have to reach out. So that's sort of what we fundamentally believe. At the end of the day, we're always going to have residents contacting us, and we need to be set up to answer those questions. But what we're trying to build is the best sort of self-service platform through online and automations that we can.
Cool. So it sounds like a trend is a desire for self-service and that kind of convenience, and immediately getting people where they want to go, anticipating their needs. That's cool. Andy, I remember you talking about the Amazon experience at an event like this in the past. I'm curious if you have anything to add to that, or anything else that you guys are looking at HRG right now that's really informing what you guys are organizing around.
Yeah, I love the Amazon experience idea, right? Where buying something on Amazon is so simple, which is what we compare to the move in. Returning something on Amazon is so simple, which is the move out, right? How do we make that tenant transition so easy, just as easy as buying something on Amazon? Because I know, like, for me, if I find something online I want to buy and it's not on Amazon, I go to Amazon and then see if they have it. And if Amazon has it, then I'll buy it there. If Amazon doesn't have it, then I really think, do I really want this? Because it's probably way more work to buy it on this other site, fill out this form. So yeah, I mean, whatever we can do to free up our agents' time to, what we're really focused on right now is technology that frees up our property managers' time to make more of a connection with our residents and our owners, right? Because if they're so busy that they can't really take that time to build that relationship, because real estate at the end of the day is a relationship business. And if they're just completely overwhelmed because we can't staff, right? Because hiring people is so hard, whatever, then we lose that connection, and then we lose that opportunity to build that relationship, which is so important. The other trend that we're really working on right now is we have a lot of activity on the institutional front. And those institutional investors are very report needy, let's say. And there's a lot of stuff that we can't get out of just typical property management software. So we're working constantly on getting more data out of the system so we can share that with our institutional investor partners, which, as you guys know, if you're trying to pull out anything outside of a normal report in a property management system, can be very difficult at times. So it's a constant battle that we're going to continue to fight and work really hard with our agents and our property managers to make sure, good data in, good data out. That's a constant, thing we're working on.
Awesome. Great. Mike, we'll bring the same question to you. What trends are you guys looking at Pure, and what are you thinking about organizing around, doing differently?
I've been in this industry for well over 30 years. I've actually been doing it probably longer than that, if you count answering phone calls at 10 years old in my own household. But, I think the interesting thing is that this industry has changed more in the last 5 years than it did in the previous 30, right? So what we're seeing is you have 40,000 companies in this industry of property management doing it 40,000 different ways, and not saying that any of them are right or wrong. But I think what you're seeing, and of course, one of the big things that we do at our company is part of the consolidation that's happening and partnering with companies. We've partnered with over 45 companies in less than 2 years. And there's two major things that are happening with this. Is that, number one, there's a generational shift in the industry where the average owner of a property management company is about 60 years old, right? And they're looking for some sort of exit. And number two, their kids are not interested in the business because they don't think property management is cool, but we're going to try and change that. Everybody here is looking to make property management cool again at some point. But you have that shift. And then you have the shift of the people who see this shift in the industry, because there's so many institutionals coming into it. There's venture capital, there's private equity, and they're seeing this shift and they want to be part of something bigger. So one of the biggest trends we're working on is, how do you manage a property one way throughout the entire country, right? And we call that way the Pure way. And the way that is collectively working together as a group of people, all these 45 companies, and learning from each one of them to find out how they manage a property, and taking all the best practices of those and putting it into one practice. And I think that, we all do things very similar. Like, there's 75% of what we do is the same, and there's 25% that are significantly different. And I'm a sports guy, so I always kind of equate this to like a batting stance of a baseball player. And of course, we'll say softball because I do coach 14U travel softball. It's a big deal. So girl power there. But what I would say is that every baseball player or softball player has a different batting stance. So you stand there and you have a stance, but when everyone hits the ball, they hit the ball the same way. So I equate that to the property management. We're all standing in a different stance, but we're all trying to accomplish the same exact thing. So how do you do that one way, which that one way will give a better experience to the tenant, or excuse me, the resident. I'm old school. I got to learn these verbiages again. And then one way for the investor. So really, that's the one piece that we're looking for, because every company right now is a fingerprint. They're all different. So how do we get that way to make a better experience for everyone to do one way of managing a specific door? And that's probably the biggest trend that we're working on. And it's a huge task for anyone to kind of conquer. And we're all kind of doing that in our own way. But that's probably the biggest trend we're trying to conquer at this time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, some interesting comments already so far. And that silver tsunami, I think they're calling it these days, Mike, of people aging out that own businesses that are, and then you think about the implications for real estate of that, all the people that own real estate and have managed it themselves that are handing down those assets over the decade or two to come. It feels like a good time to be in professional property management, right? As that demand, who has that demand, it kind of shifts, and property management companies like the ones on this Zoom being in a position to receive that business and earn that business. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like at Second Nature, we talk about a vision of how do we make an experience so good for residents, investors, a team, that people don't want to leave, and that professional property management is so different than what somebody could do on their own, right? Or that they could get from a real estate agent who's doing it on the side if sales are slow, right, for a period of time. Like, how do we really expand that gap, right, and put more distance between those things? Andy, I'm going to come to you first, and then we'll just bounce around a different order and mix it up. But what are some of the things from the resident or the investor or the team side you were alluding to earlier of focusing on getting things more efficient that are making the experience better in such a way that you think will help differentiate the professional property management firm from, do-it-yourself landlords or what they can do on their own?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a crazy time. I think everybody is dealing with lack of engagement at work, having a hard time finding people. I've learned a lot through the years with my relationship with Thad, Andrew, and Second Nature, Filter Easy folks on engaging culture, and it has to be a focus. One of the best books I've ever read on engagement is Drive by Daniel Pink. I don't know if anybody's read that, but just absolutely fantastic around autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Obviously, if we're still working from home, which I know a lot of people have, it's how do you give out that autonomy to folks, hold them accountable, make things clear, because clear is kind in management. So when I'm talking to my managers, hey, there's really two things that managers are really good at. You got to be clear and be clear on expectations. And then you have to hold those expectations. You have to hold those folks accountable for what you talked about. And if you're not doing that, it's not very kind. I think good people love accountability and they love a purpose. So, I look at Roofstock, I look at Pure Property Management, and it's very clear to me what their purpose is. And it seems like their folks are excited on what they're doing. So they're going to retain talent. And when we look at our markets at HRG, right, we're in 60 some markets where we have the least amount of employee turnover. It's weird. We have the least amount of investor turnover. They coincide. It's very similar. So, our focus has to be, giving our folks autonomy, rewarding them when they do things right, making sure that purpose is clear, what we're trying to do, and then constantly train them. Mastery is so important for engagement, keeping people and helping them see not only a path to what we're trying to do as a company, but a career path for them. So I don't know if that really answers your questions, but I'm very focused and passionate about finding really good people, retaining those people, and inspiring them to do bigger and better things with their life. That makes me happy. Another thing is, like, the most important thing we can do as managers. We're all owners, managers on this call. When I look back at my career, I'm not as old as Mike. I just look older than Mike. So the best decisions I've ever made in business are around hiring and firing. So when we think about adding team members or removing team members, just remember that those decisions are huge for your business, huge for yourself. Because when I talk to a property management owners and they're complaining, 90% of the time it's about employee performance. But if you're doing the right things in your hiring process, you can avoid a lot of those issues. Boy, I rambled. I'm sorry, Andrew. That's a lot of stuff.
I doubt many people are complaining about what they heard. That was great, Andy. Thanks for sharing that. And Drive, it was mastery, autonomy, and purpose. I think you said it a couple of times. Those were the three things there that you guys are focused on. How do we give our employees that? That's great. Laura, I'm going to come to you next. What to just wheel back to the question, hey, when you think about creating a different resident experience, investor experience, team experience, what are some of the things or opportunities you guys have been focused on recently or are focusing on now that you think can help separate ultimately professional management from DIY or an alternative to a professional management company? What are some of the things that come to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, I think I echo everything you just said then, Andrew. It's something that we're focusing on a lot. I think a lot of us experienced some pretty rapid growth last year and beginning of this year, and that was a rapid growth of staffing as well. So retaining staff and training staff, making sure they feel valued is extremely important. But that, in my mind, kind of has flow-on effects. If your staff are happy, then they're providing the best possible service that they can provide to your residents. If you can keep your residents happy, then they are ultimately staying in their property, they're paying their rent increases, they're maintaining their home, and they're not calling in unnecessary work orders. And then that sort of leads to your owner being happy because they're retaining their residents, they're getting their collections. So it's kind of a flow-on effect, which is all really important. So I think Andy touched on all of the staffing retention things, which I think are hugely important. In terms of the resident, I think I sort of mentioned this before, but the biggest pain point we face is getting maintenance issues resolved quickly. Single family residential property, this can be challenging because you're not in an apartment building. You've got to get a vendor out to the property. Often the vendor has to be contacting with the resident. You've got to make sure that you're on top of all of that. If there are any issues, stay in touch with the residents. So if you can get that right and get the resident's issue resolved quickly, I think that's one of the biggest things that's going to help them to stay in your home. But then also remembering that your residents are human and that they are people and that things that go on with their home impact their life. So if they have to stay home for something to be done to their property, that's impacting them going to work, and that can be stressful or frustrating, or it can lose them income. So I think just making sure that your staff remember that these things are impacting, and when they're having conversations with the residents, to be empathetic and understanding of their situation. And most of the time, maybe 80 or 90% of the time, you'll find that your residents are actually understanding that it might take a little bit longer to get someone out there, or that the AC vendor has to come from another place and it might take a little bit longer, and they're okay if they understand that and they feel heard. When they don't feel heard, they're going to be completely unreasonable and it escalates really quickly. So that's something that I think if you can get that piece of it right, even if you're not getting someone there or fixing the problem straight away, if you're empathetic and understanding of that situation, I think that makes a big difference to your resident retention. And then likewise with an owner. If your residents are happy, typically your owners are happy, right? You're not having excess work orders, you're getting them done quickly. But then you've also got making sure that you're keeping your vendor price points at the right level and that you're providing that information to your owners. So I think where we try to differentiate for our owners, which is your mum and dad owners as opposed to an institutional owner, I guess you would say in this instance, is that we have that institutional experience. We manage thousands of properties across different price points and markets, and they might not have that experience themselves, but we can provide that experience to them. We can give them information about their market. We can give them information about how to maximize the returns of their assets. And that's really, I think, where your differentiator comes from for a mum and dad investor. And institutional is a whole different ballgame, like Andrew touched on before, reporting. And how do you get that right? And how do you make it easy? And sort of, can you create a portal that they can digest information themselves, and what value add can you have there? So these are all things that we're sort of looking at and always trying to grow and improve and optimize on.
Awesome. Great. And Mike, we'll bring it to you. Anything else you feel, Pure is thinking about or focused on to really differentiate looking forward to the future as far as resident, investor, team experience and how those interact?
Yeah, gosh, we could talk for days on this for sure. And I agree with what both of you have said so far. At the end of the day, we're a product and an experience company, right? And that's not just us, but that's like the industry as a whole. I mean, what has always been in this industry is there's been kind of this angst between resident and investor, right? And at some point, they have to understand that they're in this together, right? And this is not resident against investor. This is something together, and that's what the property manager is here to do. But I think that some of that angst comes because we are so fragmented in so many ways, with so many people doing it so many different ways. And how do you get to the point where you're doing it one way to make it a better experience? But also the piece that's really important for us is that we want our technology to enable the people that manage properties, to enable them to do the people side of the business. We don't feel the people side is going away. We don't feel that technology is here to replace everybody. We feel that 90% of the market is owned by mom and pops, like the people that own 1 to 10 doors, right? So the investors out there have put in billions and billions of dollars, and they barely have touched the surface on how big this market is. So we have to really concentrate on how do you bridge that gap between resident and investor to make it a better experience for both. And I think a couple things is, one is on the resident side, you have our two largest generations in our country's history that are going to be renters moving forward: the millennial generation and the baby boomers, right? Baby boomers are selling out. Millennials like flexibility, where they can actually find a good experience to rent. And that's something that we have to kind of be there and embrace it, right? And say, how are we going to make it a better experience when a tenant moves in? How do we make the move in, move out process a better experience? How do we have a resident benefit package? You give Second Nature a plug because they're fantastic at doing that, offering something that they need and want rather than just charging them because we're trying to make more revenue, right? So it's an experience aspect of it, allowing the technology to do the back end minutia that nobody wants to deal with, being able to send letters automatically, schedule appointments, and do all those things that take time out of a person's day so they can actually deal with the empathetic piece of a resident having a big issue of maintenance, or an investor having some problems with their property as well. So that way you can actually handle the people side of things. So I think all in all, to kind of conclude on this is that, you need to just make a better experience overall for both sides and make sure they understand you're working together. And that, to me, out of all my years of doing this, it's always been resident against investor. It's been like this big fight. And at the end of the day, they got to work together. So that's the piece that we really want to try to kind of combat and approach, so everyone understands, like, hey, let's make this a great experience overall, because let's be honest, this industry is one of the largest in the country. It's not going anywhere. So we need to make sure that it's a good product for everybody.
Very cool.
Can I jump in? Hey,
Please.
First of all, my panelists are amazing. Obviously, great stuff there. I think I'm calling it the race to high tech. You got to have both, and whoever gets there first, I think, is going to have a large share of this market, because there's a lot of us that struggle with high tech, and there's a lot of us that struggle with high touch. But whoever can do both is going to be awesome. The one thing I really wanted to kind of nail down on purpose. Some people might know me for my suits. Have you seen these suits? I helped inspire the Second Nature guys to go crazy on the suits, and they look good. They wear them a lot better than I do. But I get a lot of people that say, Andy, why do you wear suits to work? You're a property manager. You're yelling at tenants and fixing toilets all day. That's what you do. That's not my purpose. My purpose is, what I tell my team when they come on first day. I wear a suit to work because the average Wall Street investor guy or hedge fund manager is, they manage a couple $1 million in assets. Well, we manage, just at HRG alone, we manage 16 billion in assets. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of kids' education, somebody's retirement, somebody's rainy day fund. It's all tied up in real estate, which is right now is the best place in the world to have your money tied up in. So I try to take that very seriously, because that's somebody's future that's in my hands. And I try to inspire those folks that are working directly with me to take more of an asset manager approach to the business, and not just to property management, just not just tenants and toilets and like what Mike was talking about. Like, how do we bring those two sides together so we're all winning? The triple win, it doesn't just go for RVP, it goes for residents, tenants, residents, owners, and us. So, but again, I'm really hitting that purpose thing right now, because the engagement that we're seeing in the workplace right now is tough, not just in our industry, but every industry. I just read this article this morning about have you heard this, quietly quitting? If you haven't taken a look at that, look it up on I think it's New York Times. I read it. It's very interesting what's going on.
Yeah, Andy, I was seeing that quiet quitting thing over the weekend as well. And for those not familiar, I think if I remembered, it's not when people are like the Great Resignation and like they terminate and formally quit and leave. It's at what point do people stop bringing their voluntary best energy and efforts to work? At what point do they start asking themselves, what's the least I can do to get by here versus what's the most I can do to contribute to this organization's purpose and mission, the difference we're trying to make for customers, right? The change we're trying to make happen. And man, paying attention to that versus the, obvious signal of somebody quitting or leaving probably sparks different conversations about how we build the right environment and experience at work and working with customers and investors in a way that, again, is retaining everybody. So it's cool that you brought that up. Let's do this. I want to ask maybe one or two more questions, and we'll have time if there's some questions in the Q&A that you guys would like to ask of the panel. Listen, there's a lot of wisdom up here. There's a lot of wisdom out there. We'd love to connect great questions with great answers up here. So I'll ask one or two more, but we'll have some time. If you guys want to put some questions in the chat, I'll keep an eye on them. Okay, Mike, I'm going to come back to you first this time, and then we'll go Andy and Laura. But the question is really this: like, what are some of the creative, innovative programs, business models, trends, changes that you're seeing in property management, or that you could see happening in property management? We won't hold you to this. If there's something you want to throw out there that's interesting or bold, but it's kind of experimental, whether it's from Pure or something you're seeing else out there that's interesting to you, would love to hear just like what's got your attention as you're looking forward and some of the interesting, innovative, creative things you're seeing out there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, I mentioned earlier that this industry has shifted and changed so much in the last 5 years. So you have so many different people and companies coming into this in different ways and shapes and forms. And I think one of the biggest pieces that we're seeing, there's a big shift in the technology aspect of this, right? I mean, and this is something that, prior to Pure, I've always thought about. And this really runs true into the experience of the people that are actually doing the day-to-day at Pure or any other property management company, is that most companies are using like 6 to 10 different technology solutions to manage their business. And the really interesting part is that none of them connect with each other in the real true API connection way, right? And makes it very difficult for that aspect. Now you're starting to see that trend. And I feel like this is the biggest trend that we're going to see shift in this industry moving forward, is that the connection of technology to make our lives easier, where we don't have to jump from one system to the next, to the next, to the next. And the same thing for our resident, the same thing for our clients as well, and investors, is they have an opportunity to go into one system, see one system, and they all connect together, right? And that's, I think, the biggest trend that we're going to see moving forward. And the hard part is that people see dollar signs in this industry quickly, right? Because they know, look, it's a $30 billion fee income industry, right? So you're going to have a lot of different people coming in, a lot of different technology pieces. And that's why I think it's important. There's a lot of companies that we work with directly that are really kind of from the industry, right? And really understand what our day-to-day challenges are as we're managing a property and managing a resident experience and managing an investor experience. So I think that's one aspect that I think we're going to see change, that they're looking at this closely. They understand what we're trying to do and how we can make a better workplace where we're not going in from system to system to system. I think that's one aspect. The other aspect, and I think, Roofstock does this well, but I think it's an important aspect for the investor, because we don't talk to our investors like investors. We talk to them like a single owner, even if they have, there's institutional, which is a little different, but I would say the mom and pop, we still talk to them like a mom and pop. I think an important aspect and a big trend that we're doing and we're seeing is that, like, how do you talk to the investor about their property and tell them whether it's performing, or not? Is it performing in a positive way? Is it performing in a negative way? Should they double down? Should they buy more properties? Should they sell that one and move to a different market? And these are things that, in the past, and even my companies prior to Pure in California, we didn't do that aspect. We literally managed the property, took care of the maintenance, sent them the money, and hoped that nobody complained, right? And now we're getting to the point where this is a product and an experience for everyone who comes on board. So we want to get to the point where, how is your investment actually performing? And you can do that through the proper, as you put it through our platform, you could do it through investment tools. You can do it by showing the proper reports. I think Laura kind of mentioned it, and them to have that at their fingertips to where they can go kind of get to the point where we're actually giving them valid information to understand what their investment is. So I think that kind of answers the question in a way that there's obviously a whole bunch of things that we're doing to try and make everything's experience better. But as far as the resident and the investor go, I think that's one aspect. The last piece I wanted to kind of touch upon, and that was something that Andy kind of talked about, is we want to make the experience at Pure or in the property management industry not a job, but a career, right? And that's a big piece that has not happened in this industry. I love talking to all the people that have either come on board or we talked to in the industry. Everyone's story, how they got into property management, is totally different, but a huge percentage of them were accidentally into this industry. It's not like they, went to high school, went to college, say, I want to be a property manager, I want to run a property management company. They basically fell into it, right? So I think it's an interesting piece. What we're looking at is like, how do you make sure you make a career out of this and actually make, when I said earlier, make property management cool? Because it actually is a fantastic business to be in. You get to work with so many different people. And, one thing about this industry is it has some of the nicest people in it that you can ever meet. They're all willing to share. They're all willing to work together, and they all kind of have the same vision overall. So I think making the experience of the person that's working at the company an experience that they want to stay in and make a career out of, and that's offering fantastic benefits, 401k matching, all these things that maybe smaller companies we never looked at before, but really should probably find a way to offer, right? So we can really make them stay longer, which Andy said earlier makes a better experience for everyone when you have people in the seat for a longer period of time and more familiarity with the property, more familiarity with the people. So those are the, kind of the few things that I see that we can kind of shift this a little bit. And there are kind of new trends that I think we can work on and be better as a whole in the industry.
Mike, thanks for kicking it off there. Andy, we'll come to you next. And again, the question being, what are some of the creative, innovative practices, programs, models, kind of shifts you're seeing in how people are approaching property management or that have your attention going forward, whether you're seeing it at HRG or outside of HRG? What's kind of interesting or really seems leading edge to you?
Yeah, I like all the stuff that Mike said was very interesting. Good job, Mike. No, I mean, just like, honestly, maybe we can do this in the chat. How about a question for the, can I ask a question to the group? Okay, group, be engaged here. Come back. How many people fill out a property budget for each single family rental that they manage? Waiting for the chat to blow up. If you don't say don't. Just if you do it. I'm talking about for each. How interesting would that be? It's not blowing up. The chat is not blowing up, Andrew, just FYI. How interesting, to Michael's point, how interesting would that be if we had a system? I was just talking to a turnkey guy about this yesterday, specifically, that if we knew all the points where properties were in trouble, right? We're not communicating correctly. Maintenance is too high. The tenant, the properties aren't renting. You guys know, all the reasons. I always equate them all to accounting and communication. But those things, we know what those things are when properties are in trouble, right? How interesting would it be if there was some system that we had that said all these things and we had like a green, a red, and a yellow. Okay, yellow, this property's in danger of being lost because we're not hitting the budget for whatever reason, or we're not communicating in a timely manner, or what have you. I think something like that would be incredible. But it all starts with having a proper property budget for each property, which seems like a lot of work. But if you're an institutional investor or you invest in multifamily, every property has a budget, everyone. And you at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, you check your actual to your budget. some of these softwares that we're on as property managers and on the single family sides don't even have a budget feature, or they're horrible. So we got to get that fixed, I think. The other thing, I brought this up the last time, the same similar question, Andrew, that gets me so excited about this business is, other than marriage, there's only one other event in life where you spend more money, and it's moving. Marriage is one, moving is second. Why don't we have some type of a marketplace similar to like an RBP, but on steroids, where somebody moves into a market and our software can recommend a dentist, a doctor, a half off pass to the water slide park, all that stuff. They've already put their trust in us. We could recommend that, and that could be an amazing ancillary revenue opportunity for us. I don't know how to build it, but I really want it. I think it would just be, I think it would be awesome. We had something long before technology was in this business. We called it the tenant move-in guide, or the TMIG. And we did the same thing. We went to local vendors. We put a little folder together with all these calls to action. It took a long time. We made a bunch of money on advertising, and it worked great. It was just way too much to manage on an annual basis. So something similar to like a Pinata or an RBP, but a system that maybe that could be delivered nationally, I think would be an amazing benefit to the property management business.
Are you pitching an idea, Andy?
Yeah, I think I am, but I don't want to do it. I think the need is there, if you know what I'm saying. Almost as bad as setting up a property budget for each property.
Those are great, Andy. Thanks for that. Laura, want to bring it to you next. What are some of the creative, innovative, interesting things that have your attention, or that you guys are having conversation about, whether it's internally or things that you're seeing externally, some interesting things you're seeing out there that you're considering?
Yeah, we're having conversations at the moment about how best to service our mom and dad investors. It's a really big point of conversation with us right now. And so one of the things that I actually came from financial planning background, and like Mike said, landed in property management through property investment accidentally, and here I am. But one thing we used to do for our clients was a financial fact find that the client would fill out before they came in for a meeting, that would take their pulse on where they stood in relation to their risk appetite, basically, for various different things. So one thing that we are just about to trial is essentially a property fact finder, which will go to owners so that they can we can take a pulse on how they're feeling about things, and therefore know for the next 12 months what should their strategies be for renewals or for collections. Do we want to evict someone straight away, or do we want to try to retain them for as long as we can? You know, how strained is someone financially needing the income from this property? Do they want us to push renewal rents, or do they want us to try to retain it at any cost? So we're just about to trial it. I'm pretty excited to see how it works. Maybe it'll be a complete flop and owners won't want to fill it out and things will change so much that it won't work. But that's sort of one thing that we're pretty excited about trying on the owner side of things. And then for my dream state, something that I'd also like, which is a pitch, if someone can go and build this for me, then please let me know how it goes. But just maintenance being such a pain point, I would really love a DoorDash equivalent for maintenance service, so that the resident goes and they put in their work order. You can see where your vendor is, how far away they are. Once they finish the job, you can rate your service afterwards. That would be a game changer for a property manager, especially in single family, because it's such a pain point at the moment. So if someone can build that for me, along with the local recommendations for Andy, I think we'd all be running a great property management business.
It's interesting you bring that one up. Like something we've talked about in the past and just heard a lot of conversation about is, looking at consumer experiences outside of the home and how that compares to consumer experience inside the home, right? When you look at Amazon, that was referenced today, when you look at the Ubers, the DoorDashes, et cetera, self-service has been talked about a couple of times. And hey, how do we create this platform where it's immediately obvious, like red, yellow, green, right? What's going on and how things are going? How can we start to not just organize technology, but also our networks and our expertise and everything else to, drive a lot of convenience for folks and transparency where they can move through a process easily. It's cool to hear that thread through some of the ideas and how that might materialize in rental management. So very cool. Well, hey, here's what we're going to do. I think in just a moment, we're going to bring Adair up to the stage to take people through a activity to really deepen some of their takeaways and learnings and notes. A lot of cool things that were shared. A lot, I'm sure that people are like, oh, I'd love to go deeper on that. Like, tell me more specifically about, like, can we spend 5 or 10 minutes on a property budget, or talking about what that might look like, right? And really make that practical or actionable. Hey, can we talk about some of these perks? Mike alluded to 401ks and different things. So what are the employee perks that we think are really going to drive retention and help, this industry, help people turn jobs into careers, right? A number of different things people might be thinking about or have questions about. But with the time that we have and with the panel that we have here left, just want to give you guys a final word, something we didn't cover today. But if you could express a little bit about your vision of the future for property management, how are you feeling about it? What else do you think is important that people should be paying attention to or be thinking about, in the 3, 5, 10 years ahead as you look at this industry? And let's do this. Let's go Andy first. We'll go Mike, and then Laura, you can bring us home.
Okay, can you repeat the question? Our vision for my vision.
Yeah,
or
sorry.
what?
I'll summarize it in a sentence or two here. So as you look to the next 3, 5, 10 years, Andy, what else that we haven't talked about today do you think is important for property managers to be paying attention to, aware of, thinking about as they look to the future of this industry? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, well, I definitely feel pretty bullish about the business in general. Being from the highest HPA market, I'm in Boise, Idaho, right outside of Boise. We had the highest home price improvement throughout the whole country. And so we're starting to see, I think right as of last month, we had 66% of our residential for sale listings take a price reduction. I don't know if you're seeing that in your market. That's a lot, 2/3 took a price reduction. And so we're starting to get those phone calls again, which we got back in 2008 through 2012. Hey, we can't sell our property. How much do you think we can rent it for? I would say anybody that got a mortgage in the last 5 years should never sell their property. It's free money, right? 3% interest, 2% interest. I have this conversation with anybody, anytime, anywhere. One day you're going to be printing money on the property, and right now you're going to sell this house at a 3% interest and maybe go buy another one at a 6%. Doesn't make a lot of financial sense. Hold the freaking property. Hand it over to me, hand it over to Mike, whoever. I don't care. Don't sell the property. There's a lot of money there. I talked about this a little earlier. The asset management approach to owning, to managing investment property. I think we've got to do more, like I talked about on the mastery side, to teach our property managers the full aspect of residential property management and asset management. And if we can do that, I think we'll keep them longer. I think they'll get them more excited about the business, and ultimately we'll keep our owners longer, because they really a lot of those mom and pop owners make decisions based off emotions. They get another bill that they have to fix their AC heating unit, and they're just like, look, I'm done. But they really haven't looked at the numbers. Okay, let's look at what you're writing off. Let's look at your depreciation. All these different things that they don't really take into consideration, other than they had a bad experience last month. They just want to be done with the property. So just giving them the tools to paint that full picture, I think, is going to be so important for folks to retain it. And obviously we got to do a better job teaching our folks. I see like somebody saying, hey, how can we set up a property budget? How easy is that to do? I'd happily answer those questions. We do it all the time on the larger projects. Now, we don't do it on the single family stuff, but I think we should. So anyway, that's a lot. I'll let somebody else.
Andy, that's great. Mike, we'll come to you next.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue to go to the fact that this industry is changing so much, so fast. Obviously, the private equity world and the venture capital world is on notice for this industry because it's so big and they see so much money. But I think one of the biggest pieces here is that the do-it-yourself landlord still is managing 65% of the properties that are out there right now. So I think there has to be a massive educational piece to those do-it-yourself landlords that, hey, look, the regulations are coming, and I'm initially, operated in California. I'm in Silicon Valley now, and it's one of the highest regulated resident areas in the country. We also operate in Oregon and Washington, and they are as well. And, I think I saw something in the news recently that, Florida is having some fights about rent control and whether that's going to go through or not. But it's coming. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. There's going to be regulation all throughout the country. So we really have to educate the do-it-yourself landlord so we can help provide a better experience for the resident and make sure that we're, following the laws appropriately, making sure that we are, in compliance for whatever state and compliances there are locally. So I would say that piece is important. And then, secondly, let's be prepared for the two largest generations of renters coming, right? And or residents, if you want to call them, but at some point you call them renters as well. That they're coming, and there's going to be a ton of people looking to rent a property for multiple reasons. One is, I kind of mentioned before about millennials kind of like to be on the move and be flexible. And there's a lot of working from home now due to the COVID, fiasco or whatever we want to call it. But, those generations are looking to rent, and we have to be prepared to offer a better experience for them coming in. And that will be better for everyone. And if I look forward to the future, like what I would love to see if we really can look at the technology aspect of it, how can we make it better by, being in one system, which we talked about earlier, but, taking that another step is, I really feel at some point that every single resident that's a rental should be a smart home. You literally can walk in and your internet is set up, your TV is set up, your utilities are set up, everything is all done. You literally just walk in and you're in your home, right? So I think that's something that, who knows if Google's listening, which we know they like to listen. So, that's something they can do to every residents in the country. Get a Google Home, and all of that stuff is provided to a resident at the moment they move in. So really at the end of the day, and I said it 100 times, is that it's product and experience. Like, how do we make that product and experience better for everyone who's involved in the industry? So that's the big piece that I see and where we headed in the future. And, I think no matter what size your company is, whether you're huge or small, it doesn't matter. The smaller property management companies are not, in my opinion, are not going away. They're 100% needed in this space. And I think you do have to move with the times a little bit to make sure that you're working with this to compete with some of these other larger companies that are coming who are going to offer these larger experiences. But one thing they can potentially do is offer, the personal touch, the one-on-one touch. So I certainly think it's still important. And I certainly think it's important to kind of move with the times as we continue in this industry.
Awesome. Laura, as you look at the years ahead, anything we haven't discussed yet, or what you think's most important or salient points of just to be paying attention to, be aware of, be thinking about?
Yeah, I think most of the points we hit here by Andy and Mike, but the only thing in addition that I'd add is that you have to remember that an owner has going through lots of different life cycles with their property, and maybe one property or maybe multiple properties. So being able to be that resource through their entire life cycle, helping them to do the acquisition, do the management, helping them with the decision about the sale. What does the financial piece look like? Andy was talking about earlier, I think is extremely important, and thinking about not just being the property manager, but being there for their property investment experience is going to be the way of the future. And those that can actually help expand their services outside of just being a PM for a home to help will actually help the investment portfolio of their investors, which is going to make a big difference. And then a la carte services. Do you offer just leasing for someone? Do you offer just a renewal or just an eviction process? Can you help with those sort of things? And does that help you to retain clients? I think that's an interesting question to answer, and I think it'll become more prominent in the future. So those are the main things that we're sort of looking at right now.
That's interesting. Yeah, breaking up the different service points and serving people on a different basis could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, I want to say this with the time that we have. Thank you, all three of you, for being generous with your time, for showing up here today. We know you're busy executives in important companies in this industry, and that you guys would be here and share back, so generously. That's all for today's Triple Win Property Management Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing a piece of your life with us. We do not take it for granted. I also want to give a shout out to Carol Housel for everything she and our team does to make these possible. It's crazy to think about over 5,000 professional property managers have pressed play on episodes in season 1 and season 2 now. And we really want to encourage you to keep giving feedback because more and more people are listening. It's getting better and better and better thanks to everything that you're sharing with us. If you like this enough to listen, I want to encourage you to share it with other people. You can give us feedback directly on those social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you're hanging out. You can also send us an email at triplewin@secondnature.com. And we just want to give more. There's no sales pitch here. Just want to offer more resources that help you find and stack your next triple win and become a triple win driven property manager. So where can you find that? You can find the private Facebook group. You can find our blog. You can find our newsletter. You can find more resources all at rbp.secondnature.com. Just search for what you're looking for there. And every time we see you, we want to see a better version of you and your business. To that end, keep it going, feel inspired, take our encouragement, and we'll see you next time.